Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining Reline Live. My name is Cassie Jordan. I'm the CEO and owner of Pipe Reline Solutions. I see some familiar names here logged in today, so some of you know me. I started Reline Live about a year and a half ago now, actually. When the pandemic sort of started, we kind of went virtual and decided this is a great way to bring on industry experts to get to talk to you guys. We get to talk about problems that they've seen in the field, different solutions that are helping customers, municipalities, engineering firms. Today, I am joined by Brogan with SmartCover. Brogan, thank you so much for doing this with me. I've kind of had a hiatus a little bit this summer, so it's nice to be back on the screen.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, couple housekeeping items. Brogan's going to sort of take over and talk about some different technology solutions, case studies. I'm more of the moderator, so I'm going to be watching the chat box and the questions box. So feel free to jump in anytime you guys have a question. This is an interactive live 30-minute chat. Brogan's here to answer your questions. I'm here to ask questions and see kind of how this works in my Reline industry because that's sort of my focus. But of course, there's a lot of different things out there of Reline. There's sewer pipes, there's stormwater pipes, there's potable water. So anyway, with that, I'm going to let Brogan take over and you guys feel free to jump in and ask questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hopefully you guys can see the presentation that's popped up there. Yeah, again, hopefully we're going to have some time here between slides to have some good discussion, ask some questions as we go through this. As we move forward here, a little bit about who I work for and where we're at. So we are based out of San Diego County. We're in North County, Escondido. We've been around in the industry for a very long time. We're in our 16th year of operations. Myself, I've been with the company for 9 years. I did start out on the customer service side of things, doing installations, testing these remote monitors before they went out. So I have had some pretty good luck being out in the field and also on the other side of things, talking to customers and helping customers solve some of their issues out there. Both wastewater collection systems and stormwater. So it is a very unique system and technology we're going to be talking about today. We've obviously gathered a lot of operating hours and data since we've been around. Where we're at, we're really all over North America. We did start out obviously in California. The map on the right there shows a lot of customers spread out there across North America. We're in US and Canada. Hundreds of utilities, customers, engineering firms, special districts are using us. 6,000 plus sensors out there in the field that are being used for multiple applications. We are going to focus on I&I and how these remote monitors and new technology can help customers track I&I. But there's a lot of other applications out there as well that these are being used for. There's really no perfect fit. There's a lot of different agencies that are using these monitors that have only a couple hundred manholes in their entire system. We have other customers that have thousands of miles of pipe that they're using these remote monitors. So big, small, everything in between. We've worked with customers on helping them solve some of their issues out there.
So Brogan, real quick, when you say utilities, are you talking when we see all these dots, are these different municipalities? Because you also mentioned engineering firms. So do you work with the engineering firms at the municipalities?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We really do a little bit of everything. We do work directly with cities and special districts out there, helping them solve some of their issues that they're running into. We do definitely work with engineering firms and consulting firms as well. Obviously, in the I&I space, we run into consultants a lot more as they have a lot of experience in the field as well. So we've worked hand in hand with some consulting engineers on certain I&I projects. We've also worked directly with them where they have a fleet of remote monitors that they could use, move them around to different customers and kind of spread the technology and spread the knowledge of how to use these things out in the field. Yep.
Nice.
So again, what we're going to focus on I&I today, and that's why it's bolded there on this screen. There's a lot of other ways that these remote monitors are used. I mean, this is obviously something for another day, but you can see a lot of different bullet points there listed in terms of other sorts of applications and other sorts of problem areas or stress spots for our customers where we're able to help with remote monitoring. So again, I&I will be the focus.
And I know we kind of had a poll question to maybe kick it off and see sort of, I think one of them was, are you currently using, should we launch that poll real quick?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So we're curious, are you currently using a technology for remote monitoring? We'll leave this up for just a second. We'd like to we won't necessarily talk about the results, maybe save it to the end, but just out of curiosity, so we kind of see what the group is doing at the moment.
Yep. No, that's perfect. And then that's gonna resonate with you guys later as we talk about a case study here at the end. Really, the first part of this presentation is to give you a little bit of background in terms of what's being used out there and how it's being used, what kind of technology is there. And then at the end with the case study with a customer in Southern Oregon, we're really gonna dive into, okay, now that we have an understanding of this technology and the remote monitors, how is it used out in the field?
Right.
So that's probably going to resonate with you guys in terms of what you've been doing.
Okay.
Yep.
We had about 55% said yes and 45% said no. So that's
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Yep. No, that's good. So in terms of the overall setup, how these things are used out there, it's pretty simple. If you start on the bottom left, there's remote monitors collecting data out in the field. That's the hardware. That data is then communicated through a satellite system called Iridium, a unique system that's used for these remote monitors. The data is then sent to analytical tools, which we're going to touch on. And then at the end of the day, this is where the rubber meets the road, is customers using this reliable remote data to make decisions. And you're going to see this in the case study later. But for example, we have 2 basins that we're monitoring for I&I. We had a few different rain events. We're seeing that basin A is experiencing much higher I&I than basin B. So maybe let's move up a basin and try to find where it's coming from. So that's a quick generic way of describing how this data is being collected, communicated, and then sent to the customer so they can look at the data and make decisions on what's happening. The components is pretty simple. The hardware is underneath the manhole. So really the power, like I mentioned, is in the data. And that the decisions that are made after the customer is getting reliable data. But just quickly, there's a computer called an electronics box, brains the operation. There's a battery, so there is an onboard battery for the system. A big point here is there's no existing power needed. This really opens up the field here, right, where customers are able to pick manholes specifically that they want to monitor out in their remote collections wastewater system. The sensor we use, it has both ultrasonic below and a pressure sensor above, so that gives customers a range of a 1/10 inch below, estimated into flow if needed. And then if the sensor itself gets flooded, maybe heavy surcharging during rain events, a pressure sensor will kick on. So you're getting a best of both worlds situation. Sensor hangs down, reading ultrasonic and pressure in case there's heavy surcharging. Antenna is the only thing that goes on top. You can see it on the right there, different types depending on if we're in an area where there's snow plows, we use a smaller footprint, but that's the antenna that is communicating the data through the satellite system. So that's the hardware itself, built to be in a sewer system with anodized aluminum, stainless steel, to really be used with a pretty gnarly environment at the end of the day. Install. Just touching on this briefly as well, usually these remote monitors are installed on existing lids. So whether it's a cast iron lid, some customers like hinge lids, we're attaching them directly underneath that lid. Big thing for that, the big reason, one of them, no confined space. If some of you have done I&I studies in the past, used area velocity meters or different types of monitors, going into the manhole isn't something that a lot of our customers like to do. It's time, it takes a lot of time, it's costly. So having something that is above ground, attaching directly to that existing lid, makes it easier to install and potentially move around. Some customers are able to just move these around during their studies if they have the same size lid. I know that's not always the case, but if there's a best case situation, that's something that customers can do, especially during an I&I study. Other ways to install it on the right, you can install it on the side. You could install it with bars on the bottom right there to protect it. So there are some different ways to install the system, but the way this system was built and the way we wanted to strategize install was to make it easy, simple, and something that could be moved around if needed, especially if, like we talked about for I&I. Satellite, I just wanted to touch on this briefly. Again, some of you who have done I&I studies in the past, maybe you're using manual download systems, maybe you're using cellular communications. This is a step up. It's 66 satellites that are continuously rotating, communicating the data from our systems. That just gives these remote monitors a lot more reliability. Power outages, storms, that's when customers want data, right? That is when I&I becomes a big deal, and that's when they want to see their data. So using a very reliable communication system is key here. Again, the website, I mentioned this very briefly. This is where the data goes. This is the real power, right? Is looking at your data remotely, accessing it on your desktop, your phone, your laptop, seeing what's happening and making changes on where you want to put the units next. Maybe you want to smoke test in this area now. Maybe it's time to bring out the CCTV truck and look at specific pipes. So this is really where the data is coming in. Customers are looking at it, downloading it, changing alarm levels, doing all sorts of things here. And there is a mobile app as well. So customers are able to look at things easier. It's just 2 or 3 tabs really. So if you're out in the field looking at stuff, just another ease of entry, right? Something that customers can download Apple or Android easily. So we're talking about inflow and infiltration. A lot of customers like to use flow readings, not just level and inches, but actual flow readings here. So what we're doing is we're taking our level data using Manning's equation, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and overlaying that directly onto the website. Customers are able to get gallons per day, gallons per minute. So those variables are plugged in to get flow for these sort of applications. So now customers can see dry weather versus wet weather, not necessarily looking at inches and levels, but actually looking at flow numbers for these projects. On top of that, some other tools that have been used for inflow and infiltration, tracking it and finding it. Obviously, one part of the equation is the level or flow data that customers are collecting. But the other big piece, of course, is rain, right? What kind of precipitation is happening? How much is happening? How long has it happened? There's a tool here that we're going to talk about where customers can overlay rain directly onto charts, so they can see the rain event and what the levels and flows are doing at these sites, the cause and effect. So this is obviously a big portion where customers can visually see when the rain is coming in and how their system is responding to these events. This is when you could really start comparing sites. Going into comparing sites, another tool here, relatively new, prioritizes them. Customers can run this report. They could quickly see which sites are experiencing more impact, is what we're calling it. And that gives customers the ability to prioritize, look at certain sites first and kind of work their way down the list. Again, this gets into which basins potentially are giving us more I&I in certain areas, and where the customer can go focus on those. So you can see how the level and flow from these sites is important. Adding the rain is another step, and then even another step further is having this software tool to point customers in the right direction.
So Brogan, we had a question come in. Does everyone in the department have access to the reporting, or can the administrator control that?
Yeah, so basically what happens here with the setup is it's up to the customer. We do have multiple levels of access. We have field levels, administrator levels, and even super admin levels. There's a couple different things customers can do. Some customers, they all want the highest access. They could add users if they'd like. They could use these reports. They could download data. They could change settings. Other customers, you may have multiple customers involved in an I&I project. You may have the engineering firm involved where they just want to view the data from the side, whereas the customer makes decisions on the reports and the downloading of data. So that is flexible with this website, where customers can have multiple people access it, just a couple, but there is no limit to those who can access the data and look at these reports. Yep.
Great.
One thing I want to mention here before we jump into the case study is that customers are also starting to do integration, whether they want to see our data in their GIS system to use for these projects. Again, it's a nice visual, usually with basins, things like that. We also can do it the other way, where on the right there, you're seeing dots where these monitors are located. And customers now can overlay their GIS onto that map. So now again, you could see different layers potentially with manholes or pipes or segments. And it gives, again, a really good visual in terms of where these monitors are, what they're collecting, and what happens next once this data comes in. So that was really the background of these monitors and how they work. I did want to jump into a case study here briefly. You know, I do cover the western region of the U.S. So this is one of my customers here in Southern Oregon, South Suburban Sanitary District. They've been a customer for several years now. I was working with Mike on this specific project. Just to kind of go through it, you can see the population there, the households and businesses, about the coverage of their actual system. Most of their sewer mains installs, this may resonate with some of you on the call, 60s and 70s. You know, I hear a lot of customers, it's 50s, 60s, 70s is when a lot of this pipe was installed. So you're kind of getting to that age, right, where you're seeing some failure in the pipe, or at least some cracks in the pipe, literally, where customers are looking for some inflow or infiltration, about 100 miles of sewer. So a challenge that came up is really Mike wanted to look at the district and find ways to quantify the I&I and figure out where it was coming from. So those were kind of the two main portions that he was looking for. Those who have done I&I studies before, area velocity meters they're well-established, really great monitors out there. They're basically using either Doppler, lasers, other sorts of technology to actually look at the speed of the water going through to look at flow. However, they may not be the best fit depending on the application and the project. You know, for this specific project, they were harder to move for Mike. They were expensive based on the budget that he had, and there was some manual downloading required. So again, some of you that said yes on the I&I studies, you may have had to do this before, right? That's a lot of work. You're going out there, you're downloading data, and then you're going back and looking at the data. With these remote monitors, you're getting data every hour. So there is a difference there, right, in being able to respond and look at data. So that was kind of the challenge and the goal that he wanted to do with the current equipment he had. So he reached out and looked for something a little bit different, something easier, something that didn't require confined space, something that had communications already set up, and that's where he came to these remote monitors. So these were actually used in conjunction with area velocity meters, right, where they're actually able to compare data, calibrate a Manning's equation to a known flow value through an AV meter and get similar data. So he's able to do that at certain sites. But really one of the big things here was with the specific budget, he was really able to do more with less. He was able to get more sites out there, which were able to monitor more locations during the same rain events. So that was a big plus for him. The strategy was to look at sewer sheds. And I'm going to blow up that picture on the right there, but the idea was to start and figure out which shed or zone or basin, everyone has a different word for it, was giving them the most issue. So you can see them there. There's northwest, the central, a northeast, the south, and then as you move west, you can see the treatment plant is at the end there. So they started there. They started at their trunk lines where all these pipes started to come together, where these basins were coming in. And look at those locations. So yeah, here's the blown up picture. You can see where the initial monitors went, and he started looking at data. He did this for about a year to start, looking at dry and wet weather data, looking for the delta, looking for the difference in flows during rain events. He also was able to basically, he called them virtual flow meters. You can see the flow calculations here. He was on the right. He was actually able to subtract certain sites from the wastewater treatment plant area velocity meter to subtract basins and see what exact values were coming in. That's the quantifying of the flows, right? Quantifying the I&I. And this part was more of tracking and determining where it was coming from. So if I go back, the south is really what's being zoomed in. So after about a year's worth of looking at this stuff, he figured out that south was giving him the most issues in terms of inflow and infiltration. He was then able to move those sites, relocate them into the south basin, again, pick certain manholes, and you can see these pipe segments. I mean, this isn't a large basin necessarily, or a shed is what they called them. He was able to pick these locations and then really start narrowing down, okay, now we have a basin or a shed. which pipe segments, right? Which neighborhoods, which houses, which is this a main line? Is this a lateral line? And he's really able to dive in and use this data to find those things. And then, as you guys know, at the end of the day is, what do we do with this information? How do we slip line certain pipes? Do we upgrade certain pipes? Do we pipe burst? I mean, there's all sorts of different options there. But the idea, right, is to find these pipes and fix them. You don't have the time or the money, of course, to fix your entire system. So this is prioritizing and helping the team figure out where to start. So, I kind of went through these results, but again, they were able to separate their sheds, locate one specifically, and then investigate that shed or basin further. They still have these units installed. They still move them around. Some of them are used for different applications, while others, again, what's nice about these is with the cost, you don't have to rent for 4 or 5 months and then take them out. These things can be installed year round, so customers are able to catch dry and wet weather information as it comes in. So I wanted to blow up a shot here. This is actually recent. This wasn't part of the initial project, but I just wanted to show some recent rain events from this past year. What you're looking at is the red and the blue are remote monitoring sites looking at flow. And you could actually see the orange is local radar data, where we're collecting local rain and overlaying that onto their site. So again, looking at multiple sites at one time, investigating and seeing how the rain is affecting. I mean, these are fairly small rain events. I mean, we're looking at, looks like just about 3-4 days here, and it's 0.39 inches. The total is at the bottom. But these are the sort of tools, screenshot I wanted to show you of what it would look like. And again, this is a map kind of showing what it would look like. I know you saw a map earlier of the basins and the sheds. So if you kind of took a mental picture, you can kind of see that right now it looks like, the plan is on the west side there. It looks like more of the sites are a little bit more closer to home. Most of them are in the south basin here still, where they're monitoring. They can name them by manholes, basins, whatever they want to do there. So that's just a live shot or a screenshot there showing what these remote monitors would look like when they log in and start checking data. So that is the end. I'm not sure if we wanted to jump back. I know some of this stuff we went through fairly quickly, but at this point, usually it's a good time to maybe look at the poll questions or see if you guys, or the poll, or see if you guys have any questions or if you'd like me to highlight anything specific.
Yeah, I think we should launch the poll to see who's currently tracking, just to kind of give us an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to launch this poll to you guys. How are you currently tracking inflow and infiltration in your system? And if you're not, then that's fine too. Ooh, we've got quite a few we're not so far. I'm going to give it a few more minutes and let them keep voting. So far nobody's using the smoke testing.
Yeah, so smoke testing is a tool that it does take some time. We're talking about putting door hangers and letting your customers know that you're going to be smoke testing, because you'll get a lot of weird calls when smoke's coming out of the ground in certain areas. So there is some outreach involved before you even start with the smoke testing. It is an older tool, but it is still something that customers can use, where they put smoke into their system and they're seeing where the illegal plugs are or illegal hookups are into their system. And they're able to track it that way by using smoke. It's interesting.
Yeah. So we had 80% of everybody on the call voted, and here are the results, Brogan.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone knows what inflow and infiltration is. That's good, because you joined the Reline live. So you must have known it somewhat anyway, right? 31% are not tracking it. So that's an interesting statistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that could be a couple different things, right? I mean, sometimes the I&I is something where you've done a study recently, or you've done a study a few years ago, and so you're using that data to plan ahead and figure out what to do next. So
right.
There's plenty of customers that are in between I&I studies, if you will, where they may have done one 5-6 years ago. They're doing some fixing on the pipes. They're seeing how rain events are affecting their sewer systems at their lift stations or at their plant, and then they're kind of reevaluating, and they may jump in later. Or the better news is you don't really have that much I&I, which is great. Yeah. or you don't have that much rain. I mean, I'm coming out of San Diego. We don't really have too much each year. So
Yeah, I was actually surprised by your slide on Klamath. That seems like that would be a heavy rain area.
yeah, and with what's happening with the climate and different sort of seasons, it's just harder to catch and know exactly when things are happening when you're talking to customers about these studies. So again,
Right.
I kind of like to focus on the fact that you may not know when the rain's going to happen. Mother Nature doesn't always, if you're going to rent units for 3 or 4 months, Mother Nature may or may not comply with your plan. So having something that's cost effective that you can just keep in there year round so you don't miss anything can be a big plus.
Yeah. So the questions box, if you guys have any questions, if you want Brogan to go back to anything, you can throw it in the questions box or the chat box. One thing to note is we do have 2 handouts that you guys can download right now while you're on the call. If you on the handout section, one of them is the case study he just reviewed, and the other one is just an info sheet, a data sheet, if you will. Is that correct on SmartCover? I believe that's what that is. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are downloadable now. Otherwise, we'll kind of let you guys put in any questions you might have, because we've got about 3 minutes left, and then we will wrap this up on time, which that's perfect. I will say.
Was there any other poll questions or sorry, any other poll responses outside of, so there's no smoke testing? Was there any other big majority there?
25% are using CCTV. And like I said, the 44% are using the remote monitoring, and then 31% are not doing anything.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So CCTV is a nice tool as well. So I mean, really what we're talking about is, customers don't necessarily have one tool that they use only. CCTV is used quite a bit with these remote monitors in conjunction. Again, usually when we're narrowing things down, it's kind of nice to get a literal eye into the sewer line and figure out what's happening with that line, if there's some sort of structural damage there, with those remote monitors. So again, this is, I like, and customers think about it this way, is it's just another tool. Having CCTV and smoke testing is nice, but how about some ongoing data? So I think you said 44% is using remote monitoring. That's a pretty good number. I'm happy to hear that, because using, whether it's a flow meter, a level sensor only devices out there, having live data has really become a big portion of I&I studies here as we're updating technology.
Absolutely. Well, we didn't get any more questions in, so I mean, honestly, Brogan, you did such a great job answering everything. I don't think that they had a lot of questions.
Yeah, that could be a really great thing, or who knows?
Yeah.
But I think my information is probably somewhere. If there's any follow-up that you guys want to do, if you want to dive into case studies, there's more than this one. I just picked this one specifically. So I'm always open. Again, I handle the West, Colorado West, all of those, and then up in Canada as well, helping our customers with this solution and others. So I'm happy to answer any questions offline if needed.
Yeah, and I'm here for when you find out you have I&I and we might need to reline or repair your pipes. That's what I'm here for. I am pretty much, I think, Brogan, have similar territory as you, minus California. I typically stay out of that state, but
it's a lot.
It's too much for me to cover. I have a hard time just covering the Pacific Northwest.
Yep, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. We had a great turnout today. And I am excited that Reline Live is kind of back, and expect to see more of us soon. Thank you, Brogan. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.